Under the burning sun of a remote Middle Eastern airbase, a young woman in a pressed olive green uniform walked slowly toward the guarded iron gates, her boots coated with desert dust, her face half hidden beneath aviator shades, and a folder clutched tightly in her gloved hand. But to the two guards stationed at the gate, she was just another civilian or perhaps a misplaced visitor, certainly not someone with authority, and when she reached the checkpoint, one of them raised his rifle slightly and said with routine firmness, "Ma'am, you can't enter without clearance," unaware that the woman standing before him was about to become their new military commander, the first female officer ever appointed to lead their unit, a move ordered quietly by the Defense Ministry but not yet announced to the troops. Her name was Commander Layla Rahman, a 34-year-old tactical strategist with a record of intelligence operations across Africa and the Middle East, known for her calm mind and fearless decisions. She had flown in the night before aboard a transport plane with minimal escort, preferring to arrive unnoticed, wanting to see her new base exactly as it was, unfiltered, unpolished, and honest. The guards, both young corporals barely out of training, squinted at her ID card but didn't recognize the new insignia she wore on her shoulders. "Ma'am, this area is restricted," the taller one repeated, his tone more defensive now, as the woman gave a small nod, understanding their caution but quietly amused. "Restricted?" she asked softly, her accent crisp, a mix of British schooling and local undertones. "To whom?" "To unauthorized personnel," he said, trying to sound firm. She leaned slightly forward, sunlight flashing off her name tag, and said evenly, "And how do you know I'm unauthorized?" That threw him for a second, but protocol ruled his nerves. "Orders, ma'am. No one passes without command-level permission." She smiled faintly, as though the irony itself was an unspoken test she hadn't expected to enjoy. "Fair," she said simply, stepping back as a military truck rumbled up behind her, the noise of its engine drowning the moment. The driver jumped out, saluted sharply, and shouted, "Commander Rahman. We didn't expect you this early." Both guards froze mid-breath, their eyes darting between the newcomer and the woman they had just refused entry to. The taller one blinked rapidly, his mouth opening in slow horror. "Commander Rahman," he stammered, voice cracking. The woman turned to him calmly, her lips curving into a polite, restrained smile. "Yes, Corporal, that would be me." The blood drained from his face as the second guard snapped to attention, saluting so fast he nearly hit himself with his own rifle. She walked past them with quiet dignity, pausing only to say, "Good job, both of you. You followed orders." That line, simple, measured, and sincere, stayed with them for months afterward, a reminder that true authority didn't demand obedience through fear but inspired it through respect. Inside the base, she walked through corridors lined with peeling paint, past soldiers who stared in stunned silence as whispers spread like wildfire, "The new commander is a woman." Within hours, her presence had turned the base's rhythm upside down. Files were being checked, old reports dusted off, and long-ignored corners cleaned, as if everyone wanted to prove themselves before she had the chance to judge them. But Commander Layla was not there to intimidate. She was there to lead, to reform a unit that had been written off as inefficient by headquarters, plagued by low morale and internal divisions after years of neglect. Her first act wasn't to give orders but to listen. She gathered her senior officers that evening in the briefing room, a small, windowless chamber filled with maps and a lingering smell of old coffee, and said quietly, "Before I tell you what's wrong here, I want to hear what you think is wrong." For a long, tense moment, nobody spoke, until finally one major, a grizzled veteran with a bandaged hand, muttered, "We're tired, ma'am. Tired of being forgotten." That one line broke the silence. Another officer added, "We haven't had updated supplies in months." A third admitted, "Morale's gone. Everyone just does the minimum." She listened, took notes, and nodded slowly. When they finished, she said, "Then we rebuild, together. But we start with discipline. Not punishment. Discipline." Her words, spoken calmly, carried more power than any shouted command. Within a week, the base began to transform. The old mess hall was repaired, a new rotation system was implemented, and every soldier, regardless of rank, took part in maintenance drills, not as punishment but as unity exercises. At dawn, she was always the first out on the training field, running alongside the youngest recruits, dust and sweat blending with determination. The same guards who had once blocked her at the gate now ran beside her, their earlier embarrassment replaced by deep admiration. Slowly, she earned their trust not through words but through example. She worked 18-hour days, reviewed every operation log, and personally oversaw training simulations. Rumors began spreading across nearby units about the woman commander who works harder than her men, and soon, journalists wanted to meet her. But she kept publicity away, believing quiet change was stronger than loud headlines. Then, 1 month later, came the test that would define her leadership, a sudden intelligence alert of insurgents moving near the base perimeter at night. The sirens wailed, troops scrambled, confusion threatened to break order, but Commander Layla appeared on the control deck within minutes, calm and centered. "Lock down the south gate. Move recon drones to Sector 5. No one engages until I say so," she ordered sharply. Her voice carried through the chaos like a knife cutting through fog. Soldiers who had doubted her strength saw for the first time the steel behind her composure. Within 2 hours, the situation was contained. No casualties, no breach. Later that night, when the exhausted officers gathered in the mess hall, one of the guards from that first day approached her hesitantly. "Commander," he said, voice low, "I still can't believe I told you you couldn't enter." She smiled, sipping her black coffee. "And yet you were right to stop me. That's what good soldiers do." From then on, she became more than their superior, she became their symbol of what discipline and humility could achieve. Weeks turned into months, and under her command, the base that once struggled to meet quotas became one of the highest performing units in the region. Her leadership style, soft-spoken but unyielding, spread through every rank. She rewarded merit, not connections. She dismissed excuses, not mistakes. When a young technician accidentally crashed a drone during a test flight, instead of reprimanding him harshly, she called him into her office, asked him to explain what went wrong, then told him, "Learn from it. Next time, teach others how not to repeat it." That same technician went on to develop one of the most efficient surveillance programs in the unit's history. Her philosophy was simple: you rise by lifting others. But despite the respect she commanded, Layla remained deeply private. Few knew that before becoming commander, she had lost her younger brother in a border conflict, a pain that had fueled her determination to protect others. Some nights, she would stand on the roof of the command tower, watching the horizon glow faintly with distant city lights, whispering prayers for peace. It was during one of those nights that the same guard who once challenged her approached quietly, now promoted to sergeant. "Ma'am," he said, "permission to speak freely." She nodded. "When you first came, we thought you wouldn't last. We were wrong. You didn't just change this base, you changed us." She turned, her eyes reflecting both warmth and command. "Change doesn't come from orders, Sergeant. It comes from belief. You believed, that's why we succeeded." As the months rolled on, word of her leadership reached higher command, and soon, she was promoted again, this time to regional operations head. When the announcement came, she gathered her team and said, "Every success you've seen here belongs to all of you. Remember, leadership isn't about power, it's about purpose. The same gates that once barred her entry were now opened wide as her convoy rolled out for the last time. Soldiers lined up in perfect formation, saluting as she passed. The 2 guards who had once stopped her stood at attention, their faces proud, their salute sharp and unshaking. She returned the salute with quiet grace before driving away, leaving behind a legacy that would outlive her tenure. Years later, stories of Commander Layla Rahman became part of training manuals, tales of the leader who was mistaken for a visitor, who turned a forgotten base into a disciplined force, and who proved that strength has no gender. The guards, now veterans, would often tell new recruits, "We once stopped the commander at the gate, and she thanked us for it." And each time they said it, they smiled with pride, not regret, because they had learned, just like everyone else who served under her, that true authority is never about demanding entry, it's about earning it. So when her name appeared years later in national defense records as one of the most effective field commanders of her generation, the story of that first encounter at the gate became legendary, not just because of the irony, but because it symbolized everything she stood for: respect, discipline, and humility in power. And somewhere, perhaps standing on another base in another desert, a young officer arriving for duty would smile quietly at the memory, straighten her uniform, and whisper, "Permission to enter, Commander," knowing that leadership begins exactly where understanding does, with patience, courage, and a heart that commands through respect, not rank. Like, share, comment, and subscribe to our channel.